Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Sending Ravens. And look who I have. I have Janine from Turn the Page. Is that how you'd like to be introduced, Janine?
Yeah, I'm starting to add my last name because of you. I've always been known as like Janine #2, but I always felt like, okay, it's Janine Steffens of Turn the Page.
Janine Steffens of Turn the Page, everybody. And you likely a lot of my audience also watches your show, Janine. So if you haven't seen Janine and her Turn the Page channel, so she's on YouTube under Turn the Page. Would it be just called Turn the Page, Janine? I can't remember.
It's actually called Turn the Page with Janine.
Yeah, that's right.
On YouTube. And I'm also going live on Rumble now. I've moved over to Rumble because of these situations. And I'm on Facebook and Twitter and whatever else.
Okay, and all under Turn the Page with Janine?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's good. Good. So Janine, now you're from, you said Northwest Arkansas.
Yes.
Which is really cool, right? I've never been to Arkansas. So so I'm in Calgary, Alberta. So from where I am, so I'm further north, obviously. So Northwest Arkansas. Gee, I wish I had a map. Do you have any idea sort of where I am you are?
Yeah, so if you I'm originally from the Chicagoland area, and that's why you don't hear the Southern accent. I moved here about 5 years ago. I was transplanted with my company. And my grandparents actually retired here, but a little bit further south. So Northwest Arkansas actually is a very tip corner. If I throw a rock, I'm in Missouri. But the state actually touches Oklahoma, and then above it is Missouri. And, as you go straight up, it's Missouri, Kansas, and then I think Iowa. So you kind of headed up north that way. It's a beautiful part of the country. And I'm so glad that we made the move here because it's nothing but nature and trees, hundreds and hundreds of trees around us. So, if you want me, I could go in and talk a little bit about my environment around me.
Wow. Well, that sounds awesome. But the first thing I want to ask is, what's your weather like?
So the weather here right now, it's crazy. It's bipolar. It's one day we'll get close to 80 and the next day we'll get cold. And then we start to warm up again for a couple of days and then it goes back to being really cold, which is unusual. We do get around this time of year a lot of rain, which is good because it's filling up the lakes and everything. And I do live on a lake here, and so it's just been crazy like it has been anywhere else. We've had some pretty bad storms come through here, a lot of hail, and then it warms up, and then the storms again. So it's a little different.
Well, we're famous over where I am. We're famous for being what you call bipolar weather. In fact, today it is snowing again.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So it was really warm, but our version of really warm is not everybody else's version of really warm. Yeah, we're a funny place. So this time of year is fairly typical. No one plants their gardens, for instance. We don't plant them till after the long weekend in May. Okay, because if you do, you'll likely have one more freeze. Like there's always, like my birthday's May 1st, and there's always a snow or some kind of cold weather for a day or two, at least around and or just shortly after my birthday. So this place sounds a lot colder than where you are, although you're calling it bipolar like we are. So
if I don't talk to you again, happy birthday. That's coming up for you. So yes, and I'm sure that you'll share it with everybody because I love it when you do that. When you show the personal side of everybody, it really brings something out with you. I saw your Christmas special that you did with your friends.
Oh yeah.
And it was so, to me, it was very intimate and I enjoyed that. And I'm all about getting to know the person, right? We have to know, like you said earlier, before we came on here, we always know about what it is that we do, but we really need to know who we are in order to do that, right?
Yep. That's right. Now you spend a lot of time interviewing others, Janine, which is why it's fun to share a bit about yourself with the audience. Nobody really knows. Like, I don't know. I didn't even know you were from Arkansas. Like, I had no idea. Do you live in a nature? Like, it sounds to me you're surrounded by nature. Are you living on a few acres or?
No, it's your typical average lot, if you will. So this area that I'm in is very interesting. It started out as a retirement place for, elderly people would come here, and they had these rules in place that you can only be, it was a resort retirement place. It was very beautiful. And it's changed. It's changed quite a bit. So when I came down here to visit my grandparents back in the 80s, oh my God, there was nothing out here. And I was like, and we're originally from Chicago. He lived in Chicago. I was like, Grandpa, why are you moving out here? There's nothing out here. But as time went by, they turned where I'm at from a resort area, which is just gorgeous, lots of trees. There's 7 lakes, 7 golf courses. And so it's got that, still has that same ambiance to it, but it is part of the Ozarks, which means there's a lot of hills. It's not easy. You could just get out like in Chicago and walk the streets and go for a walk, if you will, on a sidewalk. It's very hilly. And that's okay. But there's some town south of me that's more populated, and it's growing here. So all the ones from the blue states are coming here. And it's interesting. So all these lots that were around me, I may have had 3 or 4 empty lots, and lots of trees, lots of woodpeckers, lots of fox. I get to see that all day long, lots of deer. And the deer are almost like your pets. They're not even afraid of humans. So it's gorgeous. It is gorgeous.
Beautiful. Now, you said a lot of blue states peoples are moving there. So that sounds like you might have a bit of an area where you could feel a little out of place doing the kind of work you do.
It is a red state. It's always been a red state, if you will. I think, I can't think of the name of the governor, Hutchinson, but Sarah Huckabee Sanders, who was the speaker for Trump at one time, she's running for governor. She's got it. She's got it down pat. Nobody's going to beat her. I think I saw a lot of people have been jumping out of the races and stuff like that, but she's coming in here to keep it as a red state, if you will. And I believe that the people that were coming from, a lot of neighbors around me from California. So to me, I think that is blue, but I believe a lot of them in their heart were red. So when they come here, we just are all hoping that they don't bring their ideas with them, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, but if they're moving from California, that might mean, because California went, kind of really, really blue, or so it would appear, like you said. Yeah. So when the dust settles, it could really look different. And if you think about it, the last year and a half or 2 years with Mr. B's sort of fakery. or tendency, as Jean-Claude would say. I don't know. I'm thinking a lot of people that were, I don't know if you would agree, because you're in the States, so you'd know more than I would, but seems to me a lot of people might have woke up to what's been going on with that bunch.
Yeah, so when you have a red state and you feel people are coming in with the blue, they call it turning it orange. But I don't think that is so. I'm hoping that what we are actually witnessing is that people are seeing, the reason why they're showing the movie, if you will, is so that people will be well aware for the future, right? I mean, they don't want this to ever happen again. And I would think the people on the so far left side of it, if they haven't woken up, they probably never will.
Yeah, I think you got a point there, Janine. And now you spell your name the same as I do, I think.
Yes.
Janine. Now,
yes, the French way.
Yeah, it is the French. Now, growing up, were there a lot of other Janines in your, schooling or?
No, I was the only one that was named Janine. And actually, my mother, and this is funny, she wanted Janine, but she also wanted a Janie. And I think that's how she came up with the spelling. So when I was little, a lot of people did call me Janie, thinking that's how you pronounce it, until, but at home I was called Janine. until I got older, and my mother would say, please go back and correct your teacher, which was really hard for me to do, being in like third grade. This is how you pronounce my name, you know, but there was not a lot until I got older. I'd have to say I was well into my 20s. I'm not sure if that's the same with you, that I walk into a bank and there's somebody with the same name, you know, they're on their little tag there. And I was like, oh my gosh, another Janine. And I liked it because it wasn't that I felt special. It was just that it was, nobody had it, right? And you know, it just I would always look it up as a young child, you know, what names mean, what things mean, stuff like that. I was always curious about it. And you know, why my mother actually picked Janine, when I come from an Italian background. And so we had, you know, names like Anthony, Richard, Teresa, and, you know, then my younger sister was Phyllis, because that actually was a name that's got passed down through generations within my family. And then there's Janine, a French name. So I was like, okay, I'm the oddball out, right? And that's how it was my whole life. I was the oddball out. And, you know, and then when I started getting into the esoteric things, and we'll talk about, you'll see why I always felt like the oddball out.
Yeah, that's funny. Well, we will talk about how you got into the esoteric things. I was wondering about your childhood. You said a little bit about it, but let us know, was there any moment and or time in your life where you kind of got a glimpse into what you're doing now, like a glimpse at the direction you'd be going in, or is this all news to you? Like, how did you get here?
You know, as a child, I was kind of, I was a really fun, uplifting kind of a kid, always making the jokes. If I was in a family of 7 of us, I was the one that was always trying to make everybody happy by cracking jokes, you know, imitations. I would always do imitations. It was just if there was sadness in the family, I just always felt like I was the one that had to lift everybody up. You know, it was just that kind of thing. If I thought about it, what if it brought me to this point? I would say, heck no. I went the corporate way, only because, you know, my parents would ingrain in us what we had to do as a profession. My mother wanted me to be a secretary, which was okay, but it was the basis of taking me to a computer programmer in the corporate world. So those type of things, you know, kind of got me here, but it was the way that I thought about things and the way that I saw things that were completely out of left field. I wasn't in the matrix. That's all that I could say. My whole life, I was not there.
Wow, that seems to be a common thread for what we now call truthers. And that brings me to another question I wanted to ask you. What do you call yourself? You have guests on.
Yeah.
You bring a lot of intel with your guests. You've had a huge range of guests. I was lucky enough to be on there a few times. You often have whole round tables. So you're bringing people together and they're talking truth, and you're bringing a lot of different personalities. What would you call yourself?
You know, if I were to call myself anything, I would just say it was a broadcaster. I don't like to give it a label as a truther or an influencer. I don't feel that type of power behind me, and those words have power. And only, you know, it's kind of like if I were to sit down and I have done exactly what you said. I've analyzed all the different groups of people that I have on there. I'm just trying to bring awareness to people of the different topics that have been on my show. But after a while, I would actually, you know, I talk about, we have to do our own research, right? Yep. Well, when we're doing our own research, I have to do that too. And what I've come to find out is if I've had somebody on there 3 or 4 or 5 times and the information wasn't aligned with me, if it didn't resonate within my soul, I wouldn't have them back on again. And it wasn't that, it wasn't bad, if you will. There was nothing good or bad about it. I just felt like maybe their information wasn't right for the moment. Yep. And so I would move on to something else a little bit different. And my creativity was finding people of different backgrounds, but that were spiritual. That's all that I was trying to do, is say, okay, I feel that you're very spiritual in a non-religious way. Come on to my show. And I use my own, if you will, my own Akashic records to sense this about the people. And I tell you, when I get a hit, I get a really good hit. Like one is, you know, the Lewis Hanshaw, who wrote a song for me, and he did my intro for me. And I knew how spiritual he was, and we talked about frequencies and vibrations. That's the music part of things. So I started to integrate that into the show. And so from there, I mean, there's a lot of other examples I could go into. And, you know, the tarot cards, and all of those modalities I have studied to get me to this point.
Wow. So did you have a teacher with the tarot, for instance?
I did. So what I've actually first started out with was Reiki. A lot of people don't know that. I don't talk about all the healing modalities they've done. And so here's me, I'm out there and I'm trying to bring the truth to people, right? And because who opened my eyes was a few of the first ones that came out on the social media site, if you will. And I thought, when I actually saw the things about the children, it sparked something in me that I can't tell you. It hit my soul. And I just said, I have to do something. How am I going to do this? And I prayed. And my prays are with my higher self and whatever spiritual thing that is. And I was getting pushed to do this. So, you know, when I was looking for a lot of different people, and I saw how good that you were, I was going to, you know, definitely, if I thought, oh gosh, if I could get Tarot by Janine on here, because you know, the way that she reads the cards, you know, I'm aligned with it. And, you know, and then I would go to other type of modalities and I would just sense, you know, what the information was coming from it. My teacher was my Reiki teacher. She dabbled in the tarot cards. And I did that for about 5 years. I would go to these metaphysical stores, these little stores, and I would read. And I want to kind of touch upon that because I actually read more of the archetypes within the cards. I think you channel, and correct me if I'm wrong, but when I sense how you're doing it, I'm like, oh my gosh, she's really channeling this information, right? And I would look at the pictures. I was taught to look at the pictures and what do the pictures mean to me? You know, it's like your basic way of reading them. And so from there, I went on to, because I have such a computer background, I was more interested in the technology. I went and bought, it's a body scan back in the 90s, which was very similar to the Rife machine, if you've heard of the Rife machine. It's a biofeedback. And now that was really, truly aligned with me. And I was learning about vibrational medicine. And so now I'm starting to really take off and to be my own. Where when I was a little kid, these thoughts that I have of intuition and stuff were stifled by the family. Oh, you were dreaming. No, that's not, it couldn't have been true. So now I'm coming into my own and in my early 30s, and I'm really starting to sense there is something big to all of this, much bigger than me. So I started working with doctors. Doctors could not have this machine in their office because of the FDA, but I could, if they found out this machine was out of Colorado, and the FDA sort of approved it. So these chiropractic doctors or MD doctors would contact me. People would come to my home. I put all these electrodes on them. It was unbelievable, you know, and I have them sit there and I run all this information. And it was only as good as it's programmed, right? So I kept thinking, my mind would run as a program going, I could improve this. I can improve this way. So anyways, to make a long story short, I would do that with these doctors, and then they shut down the machine and poof, the company went away just like that. So, you know, something was involved there, as we know today what that would have been. And I'm sure it was the FDA. So from there, I started to see what else is out there, and I ran across the Akashics, and that really resonated with my soul so much that I kind of felt like I was totally initiated at that point in time with this energy.
The Akashic records, I hope I said that right, is a form of channeling, wouldn't you say?
It definitely is.
Yeah.
You know, and it's real interesting. If you don't mind, I like to kind of talk about a lot of people don't understand. They understand that at a very high level that Akashic records can pull from your past lives, even your future and present. What I have done, and what I was taught to do, and I also brought in my own value of everything that I have learned from my past with the Akashics, is I understand the dimensions. I understand when I'm up at a really high level of dimensions. I actually know that I could see past lives. Sometimes, just the other day, I was doing a reading. Somebody's mother came into me clear and loud, and I give her the information, and they move on. And then I raise it up a different dimension, if you will. So from what I was told, the dimension that you can actually get to is the 9th or 10th dimension in reading this information. But do you fluctuate? Yes, you can fluctuate. And it all depends on how receptive that the people are to hear the information at those levels.
Mm. Do you actually book sessions for people, or is that something you just do for friends? Like, how do you?
No, I used to travel before they came up with the Zoom thing. So I used to travel and I used to get a group of people, they would say, if you get me 20 people, I will travel to your state and do these readings. And it's a one-on-one reading.
Yeah.
You could do it as a group. I have not experienced that. To me, I think that would be blowing circuits at that point because of the different energies and stuff like that. So it's very intense.
Mhm.
It's very moving. It's very healing. I always offer a positive action. I'll even give them homework because just because I'm giving you the information, we could be giving you a healing right then and there. But then you have to continue to work on that if you choose to. It's all free will.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
bet. I have a lot of respect for people that work with those records. I've had a few readings myself, and I find it fascinating.
I do the readings here out of my home. I've been doing them probably since I got on Zoom.
Mhm.
I do about 3, well, maybe the most I could do is 6 a day, which is a lot.
Whoa.
But I have, but they, whoever it is, my guides, I have so much faith in them that if something doesn't work out the way it's supposed to, I'm okay and I move on. And if I have to reschedule somebody, and it always works that way because it's almost as if the prayer that I open up the Akashics with a prayer, and it's very powerful to me. So, and that prayer is with my higher self, the person's higher self, and it's soul to soul. It's very moving, and I connect. I feel I connect very deeply. I have, if I can talk about astrology a little bit, I have Aries in the 8th house, which is really getting to the nuts and bolts of things. It's deep, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know a lot about, I studied a little bit about astrology, enough just to get me in trouble. That's never been one area that I had ventured in, but when you do what you do, and at this point in my life, I'm bringing that all together. So I read when I'm doing a reading, I actually will tap into an archetype. There's 70 archetypes, and my teacher for that was Carolyn Mace. I don't know if you remember her from the 90s. She was out of Chicago. I was out of Chicago. I attended so many of her seminars. She probably thought I was stalking her. I would travel to the islands that she traveled to just to keep up as a medical intuitive. I did a little bit of that. I studied the archetypes, the levels of dimension that she talked about. It was always so intriguing that once we get out of the 3rd dimension, there's no time. There's none of that stuff. Where pets and animals and plants are in the 1st and 2nd dimension. That brought a lot of knowledge to me. So I let that go for a long time. And then when I got into reading the Akashics, it just blossomed. All of it came together. I'm not just utilizing one modality of the Akasha. Akasha is the space, right? And Akashic is your actual record, if you will. So with that being said, we are all energy. If you don't know that you're energy, and I actually tap into the chakras. I studied the chakras. That's where one of the first places I started with Carolyn Mace. She woke me up. And when I woke up, I was in my father had just passed away. I was 29 years old. I was laying on the couch and I turned on the TV and I was so depressed. And this woman comes on PBS and starts talking about chakras and energy and all this other stuff. And I just said, I've got to get to know who she is. And so that was my teacher, was her.
Yeah. Yeah. When you talk about archetypes, I'll go back a little ways. You were saying when you were reading cards, you were reading the archetypes. Well, the major arcana when I teach tarot is archetypal. And I do teach a way to look at even the court cards as archetypes. They really fit in really well. Archetypes really work really well with tarot, especially the major arcana. And when I first learned, for years, I did really just literally read the cards. And that, but I was channeling, but I didn't realize I was, which is likely what was going on with you as well. Right? Yeah. And
exactly. It's perfect. Yeah.
And pretty soon you're just glancing at the cards and it's all channeled. So the cards just open you up to or that at least that's how it works for me. They open me up to the story, and then the story unfolds. And sometimes I'm getting things that have nothing to do with the cards in front of me, but you get a download. So it sort of
Yes.
evolves over time, but it's just all a series of learning, I guess.
It is,
And
because we are multidimensional, and it depends on, when I say multidimensional, I think that people that perceive you as reading the cards are at like probably the third dimension, right? They see you, okay, but you are up here, you're channeling this information, you're pulling other information. And a lot of times I will hear you say, they're not giving me the information. And I so align with that, because a lot of times people will ask me something about what they should be doing. Spirit doesn't tell you what to do. You have free will, and there's still chess moves being made, as you say on your show. And so if you're not getting the information, we're not ready to receive that information, or for whatever might be happening in that particular timeline, right?
yeah, sometimes I feel like, and lately it's felt really clearly that you have to go through the process. You don't just get to be told what it is. So a lot of times when you run into where you're not getting the information, like exactly how the event will happen, or if there will be an actual event, how people in the community here, they're always talking about this event, and there's been so much information passed around about some big event that was foreseen and can't be avoided. And every time I try to really nail that one, universe is not, it wants us to go through the process. We might even be changing how that'll look as every day as we evolve and listen to our hearts and send out our intentions. So I believe we're part of this big movie, but we're also part of creating it. It's just being created as we speak, is what I figure.
Oh my gosh, I totally agree with that. So everything that we talk about, people to do their own research, and more awake that they become, the more the energy that they're putting behind it. That's why you're not getting that information, because that narrative may change, and it can change, and it has been changing. So right now, I just did a recording of a show. It's called, it was something about the bugle. So basically a bugle is everybody's fighting for the communications that's coming out right now, right? The information, the disinformation. So you're going to, right now, where I feel that and I'm going to probably ask you about that later on. And when we get to that, that's a good question if we do that, about the Battle of the Bugle is what the name of the show was, and who's got the information at this point in time. But
yeah.
Anyways, there are the basic archetypes that I talk about. So I took a lot of psychology when I was going through school, and that's why the archetypes really resonated with me. I started to put that together. Everything that we do in our life is there for a purpose and a reason. Nobody should take their life and say, God, I wasted my life. That is so untrue, because you set this up, you chose this. I don't believe in contracts, if you will, when we come down. I believe that we made a decision, a conscious decision, before we incarnated, and to come in here, and we chose all these things. And if you can't see that being laid out, maybe you need a little bit of help. And that's what I do with the Akashics, is if you're feeling stuck, let's take a look at it and open it up. But we have 4 major archetypes that I actually learned. It's a child, the victim, the prostitute, and the saboteur. They all have a light side and they all have a dark side. And from there, depending on where you are in your life, there's a field more. It's all ancient patterns, if you will, that of consciousness. And that's what I believe, Janine, that you tap into, is the consciousness at that time that you just talked about, whatever information that you're giving out. And that's why sometimes you cannot get that, because I bet you do get a lot that you don't share too.
Yeah, yes, that's true. That's very true. Yeah. It kind of like you have to read what people need. Like part of it's a big responsibility, because even as a reader for 35 years, reading one-on-one readings, and like you, my most I could do would be 6, and sometimes I'd even do 8 a day, which was way too many, by the way, and not a good idea, and I don't recommend it for readers. But I was bringing my kids up singularly, so sometimes you got a big run on the day, and you needed rent or something.
Oh yeah, definitely. I remember those days, and I struggle with corporate, spiritual, what I call esoteric things. I went back and forth, and Janine, a lot of people will say that they can't find their path. I was fired from just about every job that I did, but I was very good at it as a computer programmer. I wanted to work the way that I work. I wanted things to go the way that I knew I foreseen it to work out. But you have to listen to authority in that matrix, right? There's a
Mhm.
chain of command, and I just didn't fit that army.
Yeah, I didn't fit the matrix. I wonder if that's a Janine thing. I did not fit the matrix either. So luckily I didn't even try to. The only actual jobs I had were while I was studying tarot. I was a waitress and a bartender. I worked in I was a made cappuccinos and things in a shop
Oh
in
yeah.
Calgary for years, but I also served drinks at what's was known back then as the King Eddie Hotel. A lot of people might recognize that. There's a King Eddie in almost every city. It
You
was
were
a
probably really good as a bartender when they stroll up to the bar and they're feeling woo, and you're like, oh, let me tell you a little bit. You probably were consoling them at that point, right? That was your basis.
I definitely learned psychology being a
Yes.
bartender, but also a waitress. Mostly I was a waitress, but I did bartend. I bartended at a place called the Cafe Calabash in Calgary. So a lot of people might know that. It was pretty ritzy and fancy. It had a piano. It would have jazz groups singing
Oh,
there.
nice.
Yeah, it was pretty fancy. I was only in my 20s doing that. But the whole time I was studying astrology and tarot. And so I'd often practice on clients. like,
There you go.
like if you came up to the bar, I'd ask you what your birth sign was and chat about various. Yeah, I was always obsessed with what I was studying on the side. And then I finally, once I had my daughter early, like 30, 31, by the 31, I had my daughter. You can't really bartend and waitress being a parent, a new mother, not a good fit. So I had to give it all up. And of course, funny, I was wondering, oh, well, what am I going to do? I made a big intention to the universe to please show me my way. And it was like the whole time I was studying astrology, numerology, and tarot. So it's like it was an obvious fit. And the universe literally just dropped me into doing that kind of work. I mean, I really didn't have a choice actually after that.
You
Yeah.
see, that's really interesting because I always felt being in corporate, it allowed me to afford, like that body scan machine I talked about. That was $30,000 back in the 90s.
Wow.
It was crazy, and it was just like, it was crazy. And it's very equivalent to this Rife machine. And I'm hearing stories that this med beds will have the technology of the Rife machine because it's vibrational, right? All this other stuff that I hear around these technology of these med beds, to me is hopium at this point, because I'm all about the facts and the data, and that's why training has been incorporated. If you're not going to provide me with a lot of information where I can actually make a good, solid decision about the information you're giving to me, I'm going to sit on the fence and I'm just going to put that off to the side and move on to something else. And that's what I have been. I know that this med beds have existed for a long time. They just called it other things. And you may have run across, there was this mat my friend used to talk about that you lay down on the mat for like 20 minutes and you get up and, and to me, that was a med bed. I don't know what these technologies were called, but the machine that I had, it was able to record your frequencies and your vibrations and see what is off. They obviously had a lot to do with the physiology. So you had to understand, the anatomy, if you will. And so I took all that and I just kept thinking there's so much out there that could be improved on. And this was the early 90s. Now where we're at right now, they're talking about this medbed technology. And it wouldn't surprise me that something comes out real soon that I don't think the medbeds, the pictures that they show of them being this blue or green color, and it looks like it's in a spaceship. And they say that the information came from off-worlders. I think the information came from the off-worlders. I don't believe that the information was probably channeled to somebody. And, is it an ET up there saying, I'm going to make this med bed for this human? No, I believe that we channelers are able to access the information. And there is something I'm studying right now, and you may have heard of this, Janine. It's called Blue Brain. And they have been trying to understand the different dimensions in the body. And they're using this science meets spirituality. And I've been studying this. Alex Collier talks about this. And I'm hoping that he'll come on to my show and we can talk about it. And then there's another technology out there that's called the Think. and which I think was on Nicholas Venemer's show. I say his name wrong all the time, but they actually could work with the brain and put it back. So if there's been trauma, damage, Parkinson's, so somebody's channeling this information. So, you know, when I'm saying we're at that point, Janine, I think that we have to be aware of the various dimensions. We have to be aware of our energy and all that makes up the chakras, the energy, the aura. Back in the day, we used to get our aura picture taken. Do you remember that?
Yep.
People had machines and you had different colors around you, and then they would try to read into it. I'm even seeing that coming back now, but the technology is much better.
Uh-huh. I even think healers are sort of in a way enacting what a med bed might do. Like my favorite kind of work is cranial sacral, and there's nothing like it.
I know, I love it. I'm glad you brought that up. Isn't that just awesome?
Yeah, it's like, it's not, you know, it may not be for everybody, but for almost everything, somehow anything physical that manifests with me is usually because I'm ignoring an emotional situation. And I don't know if that's true for everybody, but I'll tell you that's true for me. So when my knees go out or my hips out or it's almost always an emotional situation I'm reacting to. And I'll go to a cranial sacral healer, and I'm telling you that if they're good at what they do, they fix me right up. That's my favorite work. I'm thinking that maybe is a form of what people are now calling med beds, could just be channeled, like gifted channelers channeling, maybe getting their direction from off-worlders, like we're saying.
Janine, you are so right, because that's what this Project Blue is all about, is taking the spirituality. And what they've done is they didn't write the program to work with it. They collected all the data. So they're collecting the data that they're seeing, and then this data actually help them, I guess, create this program so that it's reverse engineering is what they did. So I don't know how they did it. I'm still researching. A lot of it just goes over my head because they are, you know, I've watched a lot of these YouTube channels on this Blue Project. If you go back 5 years, it's just way over my head. So what I did is I found something a little bit more current, but they have been taken, I think they're able to take the studies of people who can channel and put this information into a program, if you will. But I think that we're constantly, if we are always wanting to be in the healing, like you open up your tarot cards, I don't know how many times a day, you're constantly got that channel open, right? You're going from the third, the fourth, the fifth, the sixth. And when you get a bit of a hit of information, you're not sure where that came from, but you might take it and put it aside and say, okay. And then all of a sudden, boom, you'll see more of information about that. Other people are tapping into that information, right? And so I'm thinking is that if this Project Blue is accessing information when people channel and it's coming into the brain, how are they, you know, creating this program or what have you? I'm not sure how it all works. I probably am just babbling at this point, but it's very powerful. It is very powerful. And I'm so glad that they're actually taking the spirituality and science, if you want to even call it science, and bringing it together.
Mm-hmm. Now, before we went on here, Janine, you were telling me that your channel's down again. Can you tell people how they can get a hold of you, and what happened with the channel going down? Did you get a strike, or what are they doing?
Yeah, it was a strike from a month ago. It wasn't even what I had just currently did. So it was probably about 6 weeks ago, and I went back. And it made no sense. We were talking about finance. So they said I was bullying the community, which is just a bunch of whatever. But so I have backup channels. I have one that's called TTP News with Janine. I also have one that's called Turn the Page with Janine #2. And I just created a new one. It's called Akashics with Janine Steffens. And and then I decided I might just be done with this. I know that there's a lot going on with censorship, and you've got Elon Musk who may be bringing back the Twitter, so it won't be censored as much. But I don't feel with the Google and the YouTube that are together in bed, if you will, they do run, they make a lot of programs out there that we're not even aware that was written by them, and they monitor everything. So I'm now on Rumble. I always been on BitChute, and but Rumble, I started going live on that recently.
Okay. Yep. Well, that's good to know. And where do you want to take your channel? Are you going to continue just to bring people on there, or bring more healers on there? What do you got in mind for the future of your?
Well, what I actually have in mind is I am vetting more of the information. I'd like to bring more of the doctors on. It's always been about authors. It started out with Turn the Page, is I wanted authors on their written books.
Mm.
And then I didn't want to limit it too much of that, but Turn the Page, when I was driving, I actually was praying and asking, what should I name the show? And then Bob Seger's song came on the radio. I've told the story before. Turn the Page. I was a huge fan of his. And then I just asked Spirit, if this is what it should be, please give me a sign in nature. And the hawk is one of my animal totems, and flew over the car. And I said, that's it. It's Turn the Page. I also, I don't know if you can see this back behind me, is the eagles. I've always liked eagles. It's those eagles on a drum back up there.
Uh-huh.
And I used to do a lot of drumming too. And in my community, if I could just plug my community a little bit, I started a community, and I would love to have you in there, Janine. So these communities are to bring a lot of other light workers, or if you're not even a light worker, we'll do various type of modalities, drumming. They talk about everything across the board. And I'm recording them and I'm putting them on my show now. I have, a lot of different people coming in to talk about what they feel is important about communities. And so we get to see it's kind of like what you're doing with me, see a whole different perspective of who I am. And I'm doing that with a small community that you could sign up on TTP Reading 1 on Patreon. I just asked for a small love donation, $5 or $10. You can come into that. And it turned out to be once a month, but now I'm doing it 3 times a month. And we'll just, whatever anybody is struggling with, whether they need healing or they want healing for someone else, or they want to know how to build up their humanitarian project.
Ooh, that sounds like some ambitious projects you got going on there.
Yeah, it is. I want to serve humanity a little bit differently than what I have been with bringing people on. And to me, it almost felt like I was just having a show of like information that wasn't pertinent to help people grow emotionally, spiritually.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And you're going to we're going to have all of those links, I hope.
Yes, I will send them over to you. Yeah, there's so many of them. My goodness.
Yeah.
But
just so keep up with what you're up to.
Yeah. Thank you.
This is the time I like to offer my guest the opportunity to ask me a couple of questions, or around a subject. There might be a 3-part question you have, or one in particular question with the cards that I could answer for you. And it could be anything. You can ask personal. It's up to you. Just remember you got a big audience, so
I know.
I want to share.
Well, one of the things that kind of crossed my mind is recently I did a show, and it was about information that's being put out there, and I don't even know how to phrase this, but it was the Battle of the Bugles, what the name of the show was. And what I'm hearing on various platforms is that I'm not sure how to phrase this, so maybe you can help me with it. Some of the social media white hats are not exactly white hats. And some of them that you think are dark hats, or some of them, the white hats, I believe, are trying to keep the correct narrative going. And then you'll have someone else that comes in from another platform to create chaos. And I'm just wondering, is that currently being heightened right now? Is the chaos being heightened with when I call the Battle of the Bugle? That just means information, the bugle that people put out and they speak. It used to be a newspaper. It used to be called bugles. And so it's just information that I feel right now that is really confusing the heck out of a lot of people.
Absolutely. And I've looked at that a few times in general on the channel because it does feel really intense right now. And it does feel like a battle. Mm-hmm. And we're getting pulled, like people in the community feel like we're getting pulled in every direction. Every day I get about, 20 emails about, the exact opposite thing that we've been getting or I've been getting on the channel when I read, and then somebody else will find 4 or 5 videos from other truthers that saying the exact opposite thing. So it gets really confusing.
It does before you actually go into it, because what I'm seeing is a lot of people, even my close friends that used to, okay, let's just say we were all addicted to 20 shows at once and we couldn't wait to watch them and see. And so then everybody was in sync, and now they're not in sync, and now they're not even paying attention.
Yeah.
What really disturbs me about that is the dark cats winning at this point to make people just, we turned off the mainstream media news. Now are they going after the social media to have us turn that off? So what I found is people are narrowing it down to like 3 or 4 credible people that they feel the information resonates with them. And that's good that they're doing that, but I think that they need to take it one step further. So I guess my question, it's pretty vast, and it's not exactly with a lot of intention. I just want to make sure that the social media sites that people are watching, are they being presented with good information or a lot of false information?
I think fairly recently they've had some false things just dropped on them. Okay, so as much really good information, because that card would be good and revealing and getting us to the light, let's say. But there's also been some shocking sort of bombs thrown in there. Let's say, I guess I got to be careful with that word, but some explosive things thrown in there. But this was in the past. So it was more controlled in the past, but I feel like there's hidden things, people with hidden agendas there, they're hiding. So some people might have been hidden, or maybe they don't even realize, or somebody might have sent them information that they believe to be true. And I think the more shocking and the more it takes you away from something that took you years to understand, I think the more you want to at least sit with it. Okay, because this feels like it's literally put in there to disrupt, and in a subtle way.
Yeah.
Plant it. Okay, so I've even got, I don't know if you find this yourself, but I get emails from people. And they literally, you can usually tell, not always, but you can usually tell, okay, this seems like somebody disruptive. And they'll tell me something really shocking, or they'll show me something really shocking. And then they'll leave their phone number if I want to get a hold of them and talk more privately about some intel they have. And it's usually about another truther or about a piece of information. And I tend to stay away entirely. I don't think I've ever phoned one of those. And often I often will take them out of my email, like where they don't have a capacity to email me again. If I get, so usually I'll throw some cards on it. And okay, this doesn't feel right. And you can usually feel that it's a disruptive, and if it intentionally kind of completely takes you right off the track, that's when I get suspicious, because it's taken us 2 years to unravel what we know. And I'm not saying everything we know is true, but I'm saying we got the general gist. I think I really do. Yeah. And if somebody's throwing some stuff out there that'll completely takes you over here, the exact opposite, or, to me, that could be disruptive. So yeah, it looks like there's things, and I think it's out of desperation. I almost get this as booby trapped. So it could have been, there could have been plants, or they could even trigger like certain really high profile people could even have been like when I looked into, and the only person I've ever really deep dived on, and some people get really mad at me when I mention it, but Kim G, I'll just say. Okay, well, like she might be somebody.
I don't even know who she is. People have asked me about her. So whatever reason, it's not even coming to me, so that's good.
Impossible. So I feel like she's like either literally a psyop or MK altered, and maybe doesn't even realize it. She has a whole story about being sort of picked out at a really young age and having sort of what sounds like a handler at a young age, but then they disappeared for years. Well, I doubt that. She probably doesn't, they erased her memory or something. This is what I get. Anyway, so you might have some people like that in there, and I'm not prepared to look at all the truthers one by one, and like I don't think that's fair to do. People are going to have to just feel their own intuitive. If you feel like somebody's really saying disruptive things that are gut punching on a regular, and almost throwing you right off your years of study path. Okay, you better sit with that for a while and just feel it out. Okay.
One of the things that they were saying is that, and I've noticed this a long time ago, there's various groups that stayed together, and these various groups will repeat the information. And to me, if that information doesn't align with me, I stop watching those various groups. And it's not that I'm telling you to like not be aware of what is out there, not to watch the stuff, but it's just like anything else when you're watching TV, you know, whether you're going to watch the scary movies, the comedy movies, you know what I'm saying? It's like something that has to be aligned with you, that resonates within yourself.
Yeah. And of course, there's the idea that we create what we focus on.
Yes.
So I keep that in mind too. Like if somebody's regularly bringing really depressive vision of something, I can't watch them, even if a lot of what they say is very accurate. I can't watch that. You know, there's a few out there that are like that, and that's just their perception. That could just be a personality trait. If you looked at their birth sign, you know, they could have a personality trait. I am generally want to uplift, and even when I had a big clientele, the spirit world channeled through me very uplifting ways to look at things. I got my people looking at things from the most positive, because I feel like you can create and work a lot better if you're not coming from your, you know, this is, you have nowhere to go here and you're totally at a dead end. The whole, all humanity is doomed, blah, blah, blah. Okay.
Yeah.
Like how many times have we heard that over history? And humans always, I have a huge faith in humanity. And I believe we're all learning something from this. So to me, it's like, that doesn't make sense to my vision of the way my life's gone. Every time I faced a really big hurdle, if I just understood what I was trying to learn from the hurdle disappeared, dissipated. Okay. And I grew. And as I grew, I got more successful and not less. If I did what looked like my lesson was, and I actually learned the lesson. So my experience in life over 60 years has been, if you just face the thing head on and in your heart know and feel guided by your soul what to do, and you do it even if it's hard at the time, then you're gonna get, things will get better, not worse. So I believe that's happening to the whole human race right now. That's just my belief.
Yeah, and one of the things too that I always like to point out, even when I'm doing the Akashics, is there's a pattern with, you mentioned this, I think, earlier about patterns. It's always been a part of my vocabulary, the word patterns. You can't, if you're the pattern that you're looking at and they don't give you the information. But with me, I look at it where the pattern is and where they're stuck, right? And so there's various points that I will look at to say, okay, you know, if you feel like your life is not you want to be in a certain place with your life, and you know that, it's like the first question you asked me, did you always know that you were going to be doing this even when you were a young child? And I would say no to you, but I always knew that there was something I was trying to achieve. Didn't know what it was. I had the determination, but there were times where I always felt stuck, and I was on the wrong path, if you will. Was I in the matrix too much? Yes. As soon as I got in the spiritual side of things, that pattern would start to shift a little bit. So reading your own energy, you know, trusting your own self, bringing it back in, finding that alignment within yourself is so important. And that will lead you to what information that you think that somebody is giving you is true or not, because it's resonating with your soul.
You bet. I love that, resonating with your soul. When
Yeah.
your soul feels aligned with something, it's almost like I feel joy when I hear something that my soul's like, oh, somebody just put it into perfect words for me.
Yes. Yeah, it is. And I was talking with somebody on my show the other day, and I said, if I've got too much that are going on right now, I'm blowing circuits, literally blowing circuits. And it just means time to bring it all in, quiet time. And I think with them taking my channel down, and they do it on the 8th of every month, they try to hit me with something. It's always on the 8th, which is interesting, because that's my birthday number, is the 8th.
Wow.
But it also means power too, and it's also infinity if you turn it sideways, right? But I get hit every 30 days like that. And as soon as one clears up, I'll have one and they'll give me another one. And I just thought maybe it's just time that I need time to decompress and find myself again, because I would go morning and then afternoon and then readings in between. And I think I was kind of losing myself in that. And I honor that. I honor that. Well, a lot of times I don't know when to stop, because I love to be of service to people. I love to help people. And one of the things I do love to do is when I see somebody with really good gifts, I want to promote them.
Yeah.
It's just part of my nature. I'm like, okay, come on to my show. I don't know who you are, but come on to my show. And, you know, and it always comes to fruition. It always comes out to be a really good thing.
Wow, that's interesting you said that, because I also love to promote others. That is a thing I like to do.
Yeah, it's
Awesome.
because you see their gift in them, right? And so if you see it, you want to share it with everybody. And they know they have it. And sometimes they just need to be jump started a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. Or and just I love to share.
Yeah.
And I think you do too, Janine. And it's so interesting
I
that we both share that name, Janine, and we both like to share others with our audience. It's wonderful.
Yeah, and you know, it's just part of my nature just to help humanity. It's always been that way, and I never knew it was called helping humanity.
Uh-huh.
I just thought I want to be able to help people, and I always got in trouble, like in the corporate, if I would take like a young intern and say, I'd see their gifts in them, and then I would say, okay, you can work on this, and I was so out of place, but I always knew where they would go. Or I would sit down with somebody that would just got out of college and they'd be sitting next to me and I'm supposed to be teaching them something. I'm like, one day you're going to be my boss. Sure enough, they're my boss. But it's just that, you know, you could see the drive in people, right? You can see their passion. I can see their passion.
Mhm.
And so, but anyways, I love that you have the passion to help humanity. We're doing the readings and bringing clarity to everybody. And I do appreciate you, Janine.
Awesome. And I appreciate you, Janine. Pretty sure everybody watching does it. Now we know a lot more about you. I
Yeah.
had no idea you were doing the readings, Akashic record readings. So we will have all of that available below the video, everybody. Look in the description section and we'll have that. And I'll likely pin it as well as a pinned comment, Janine's links. Thank you so much for sharing yourself with us today, Janine.
It was fun. I got to be interviewed instead of always doing the interview, and I'm enjoying it a lot. Thank you, Janine, and blessings to you all the time.
Yes, and blessings to you.
Okay, bye bye now. Bye.